things like that.
Is that right? Did she recognize you? I just feel
No, but she was very polite. No, I know. I know. Neither. Good job. My little earbuds. It's different. It is
Some chairs together. Okay.
well, you guys choose your seat.
Officially introduce myself. Are you Gwen?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so I have a really question. I couldn't figure out how to do my classes.
Oh, that's not a problem. Like, why don't we just chat like right after the board meeting?
Sure.
All right, let's sit together and we'll get it done.
Perfect. Thanks. Hey, how are you? I'm well, Donna. How about you? Nice to see you. I'm fine, thank you. I forgot your name. Kelly. Kelly. Yeah, nice to see you.
The meeting Thursday night to go over. So tomorrow night, no, I'm sorry, today's Monday. Wednesday night we're meeting just the grants committee. And then they decide which ones they want to fund. And then Thursday night they approve it at the board meeting and you'll know by Friday or Monday. Yeah. They did that on purpose so you have it. Yeah. It'll be that quick. They got 19,000 more grants than they got money for. It's just isn't a bad thing. You know, we're someone forward to the fall if you need to. So.
I thought you meant like. Yeah, we could say
Maybe I should get the agenda page.
You don't really turn your foot that way. Yeah, it's, you know, I know, but I just did it wrong.
Like the fishing club website.
Hey, does this one actually go for next year?
Okay.
Or is that just from
So I know
the
I just kind of show you the
Or was that just a
So, right now, it's look, it's been,
It's about 40 too.
Did you like the way you did atomic habits? So you got two. So you got two?
We're all
Yeah.
one and a half. It's a good book.
This one? Yeah.
So I think
you can send it.
It's really nice.
it's not indicative. It's not reason. I learned stuff as a parent. I've been a parent for how long?
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah, there's always stuff. Yeah, all right.
Adding like Facebook and YouTube, it's the whole community, so it can
We finally try to find if we
I think people have heard of it, but from what I saw, nothing, but there was like a, when you made it count.
you just basically, I think he said, they never did that with another
See, actually, it's built, so I think it's mine, as far as my Google thing, but she's
Mr. Wolf. Cupid. 9 minutes. Record. I don't know. I'm feeling very international. I wonder if there was.
Good evening and welcome to the February meeting of the Granville School District Board of Education. Please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Ms. Deeds? Here. Ms. Shaw? Here. Ms. Abed? Here.
Thank you. The first item is approval of our agenda. There is one modification, or actually two modifications that are shown in the addendum that we will get to in due time. Any questions or comments on the agenda or suggestions? At all?
We have a motion.
Oh, yeah.
Second. Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. Abed? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, so that brings us to our staff reports, and as part of our staff report, we're having a student presentation from students from the AP Environmental Science class to talk about land lab goats. So yes, you heard it here, land lab goats. So I have seen this presentation, probably slightly modified since then, but I think you'll be impressed with our students from AP Environmental Science. So students, you can come up and stand right near the podium, and then Mr. Bernat, I don't know if we have a slide advance
Yes, there is, and it's already plugged in.
Okay.
There's a little remote to the right of that laptop. Yeah, I know.
Good answer, Mr. Burnett.
Glad to help.
Way to throw your voice, too.
Director of HR right there.
I'm sorry, I'm at the facilities right now.
I thought beating on Glenn was restricted to the workday.
The PowerPoint presentation, will you just let the board know who you are, name and grade level?
Okay. I'm Elena, I'm a junior.
I'm Carly, I'm a senior.
I'm Ella, I'm a junior.
I'm Ava, I'm a junior.
I'm Claire, I'm a junior.
I'm Jacob Valenzuela, I'm a junior. I'm Nick, I'm a junior. I'm Case, I'm a junior.
I'm Drew, I'm a junior.
You got it. Okay, so the first question that pops into my mind whenever I think about this whole project is, where is this going to happen? Where is this going to be? So broad answer would be the land lab out at the intermediate school. More specifically, the agroforestry area, which is a part of phase 3 in our land lab. This contains multiple fruit trees and bushes, and also, as you can see, the little white boxes more towards the tip of the triangle, those are the beehives. This is located on the left as you drive in from the Bird Street entrance. So our idea for the goats would be up on this path over. This entire top of the triangle would be fenced in, and we would hopefully have our shelter just to the left of the bee boxes.
So next we have our goat counts and breed. So we are planning on purchasing 2 American pygmy goats, and we think these goats are very good because they're relatively small, growing to around 24 to 36 inches in height and only 50 to 75 pounds in weight. Goats, like other herd animals, are Goats are herd animals and need a pasture buddy in order to stay mentally and physically healthy. We think that these pygmy goats are the best option because of their size and their low maintenance level, and they're also very friendly goats. Recently, a special opportunity has came up to us with Mr. Czukowski, who is actually here in the back there, and he has offered us a goat loan. He just had baby goats recently, and
So nice of you.
instead of us having to buy the goats, he offered to give us the goats for a year and try it out, the situation. And if it ends up working, we like it, everything goes well, we would keep the goats, and if not, we could just simply return them back to him. So that's a very cool opportunity that he gives to us.
Alright, so as far as fencing goes, we were planning on getting treated wooden posts and metal cattle fencing. We could either get these from Lowe's or Tractor Supply Co., whichever one we find will fit. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick these wooden posts, these 8-foot tall wooden posts into the ground, and every 10 feet, and then we're going to string them together with the metal cattle fencing. And this is all being installed professionally, courtesy of Mickey's Roofing, so there shouldn't be any faults in the fencing or anything. And also, this fencing it's very necessary in order to keep the goats in, and also to keep predators out, such as coyotes and foxes. And also, we decided that we're going to add a double gate, similar to ones that are found in dog parks. So, like, there's going to be the actual fenced-in area where the goats are, and there's going to be another, like, little small fenced-in area with the gate, so that when, like, kids or anyone else tries to go in, the goats don't get out. And also just to keep like intermediate kids, make sure they don't get in super easily. And this, like the projected cost, we're thinking is around $1,500.
And can you share with the board some of the potential predators that you're concerned about?
Yeah, the main ones we're concerned about is coyotes and foxes. There's probably other ones, but for the most part, those are the 2 main ones that the fence is going to keep them out.
Thank you.
Okay, so shelter. We're planning on purchasing a pre-built shelter from KT Custom Barns. They're an Amish building company. And the total projected cost is going to be $3,500 because there's a $325 delivery fee, but since we are a school, they are going to waive the $325 delivery fee, and that's the exact product up on the screen of what the shelter will look like. It has an area for storage of materials and supplies, and then an actual area for the goats to live.
So goats,
they need to be mentally and physically safe. So they're obviously, if they're bored, they're going to try to escape. So they need to have stuff to climb on, stuff to just like almost tear at. So like stuff like tires, benches, wood pallets, crates. And this could also be an educational opportunity because we could even have like intermediate kids like design a like playhouse almost for a goat. So that'd be
Okay, so for food, we already have reached out to Kiwanis, and they're going to give us $500 a year to cover the food costs. So we would specifically get this food because it has all the necessary minerals, that's calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, copper, which is all like critical to the goat's health. So that would all be included in that food specifically compared to having to buy like vitamins or like a salt block or something for them to get those values good. This was a big thing for 6th grade curriculum. When we met with the teachers, they were really interested in looking at the different minerals in this. So this would be another tool that we have to take for intermediate school.
Okay, so water, and electricity. Our main system for collecting, or for getting water for the goats is through a rain barrel, so it'll connect to the gutters of the shelter, and we live in Ohio, so it shouldn't be a problem. We get lots of rain. And then as a backup, we are also planning on purchasing a 60-gallon water tank and filling it up as needed. And then through the winter, we want to get a small heater for the water to keep it just above 32 degrees so it doesn't freeze. And that would make unnecessary electrical costs. And there's a box in front of the area, an electrical box in front of the area that we're proposing to put the goats in. So it should be a relatively easy tap in. And so we'll just need an electrician in for that, and the projected cost for the water systems is $350.
So for the medical, I have reached out to the Ohio State University Farm Animal Hospital Children's Branch, and I specifically talked to Dr. Preston and Dr. Anderson, and I got a the price for the initial checkup, and they said it would be $55 if we were able to bring them in, but if they had to come out to us, it would be an upcharge of $90. And so they said that emergencies could be up to $1,000. So in our budget, we have left aside an emergency fund. And the most common reasons for them would be diseases and arthritis and impact injuries.
So, like any animal, they need consistency and love. So we plan to do a 9-week rotation so that they can get used to all of us. So those need a sufficient amount of water and food every day, about 2 pounds of feed and 1 to 2 gallons of water per goat. And then the good thing about having them at the intermediate school is they'll be exposed to a lot of different people, get used to everybody. And Mr. Dukowski gave us the opportunity that whenever, on rare occasions when we're not able to make it out there, any of us, that he'd be able to go out there and check on them and do the basic needs.
So it's very important to keep the goats and the people that do them safe. So first, like you said, we talked about getting a double gate fence to keep people and like safe from coming in and to keep the goats from escaping. Another thing is having signs in front of the gates to inform bidders. Just so they know to like be careful. And then also we have a parent waiver for parents of the kids in like intermediate schools to sign just so they know like to be like careful and stay safe. And then we would also be interested in putting in cameras on the shelter, facing in the shelter, and then also in the pasture, so that we can like check up on them sometimes and just monitor to make sure that they're safe.
Okay, so I'm sure the big question right now is how does this help us? How does this help the school? How does this help all the kids and parents and teachers? In the high school, I think that there are a ton of enrichment opportunities for high-achieving academics, as well as for kids who are really struggling in the academic department. I know that school isn't easy for everybody, and having a hands-on opportunity to learn would be extremely helpful for some of those kids. So in a biology class, I think that if we ever got into maybe breeding goats and stuff, the Science of Life would be a really cool unit. I think AP Bio could really run with that far. This is also opening the door for many student-driven assignments and projects. I think we could possibly get a mechanics class or something in terms of just like how the fence works and stuff. We could build that in multiple different places. Again, this is also going to help kids that don't like to be in a normal classroom setting. I think that if some kids had an opportunity to go out to the land lab and be involved in something that wasn't just planting trees, learning about different types of seeds, which is also very cool, Mr. Redding, I promise. But I think the animals might be helpful for some other students to help get their interest. This also gives something to look forward to. I know that also, again, a lot of students, school sucks. It really sucks for them. And so to have something to look forward to in their day would just really make it a lot easier to get up and get in the car in the morning. This also helps us do learn differently. I cannot think of a single Lincoln County school that can say we have goats and we use it to heighten the achievements of all of our students. I think that this really would set us apart from a lot of schools, not only in our county, but in our state, possibly even countrywide. So I think it helps us do a lot of things differently. In the middle school, this helps them become connected to the high school before transition. I think the land lab would be a great way to bridge that gap. I know freshman year is very stressful for multiple incoming middle schoolers. And I think that, middle school is such an awkward time that having something to easily connect with other students about would be really awesome. They get familiarized with the land lab, so whenever they do make it up to Mr. Redding and they make it up to some other projects that would lead them into the land lab, it isn't so new and it isn't so hard for them to navigate it. They would have the same science opportunities as GIS, which I'll get into right here. So jumping over to math real quick, I unfortunately had used a lot of math to figure out the area of the pen. My math teachers were right. So I think that would be really awesome. I know it's hard to get a bunch of fourth graders out there measuring pens and stuff, but I still have the measurements. I'd be more than happy to give it to Mr. Mollingham and some of the other teachers to maybe do like a class-wide problem, like the thinker cap problems. I think that'd be really cool so they can physically see it. Sorry. Okay. And then in science, we also met with GIS teachers last Wednesday, which there's a whole slide on that next, so I'll probably talk about that in a minute. But some ideas we had were to use a microscope in the 6th grade curriculum. They start using a microscope. So I think if we swab some hooves or stuff like that, looked at maybe some samples underneath the microscope, that'd be really interesting and really cool. Again, very once in a lifetime opportunity. Possibly anatomy of the goat. We could compare and contrast like anatomy of a dog, horse, cow, multiple different things that could happen there. Social studies, I know that also in 6th grade they do a very big Middle Eastern project and very big Middle Eastern based curriculum. Goats are a really big part of Middle Eastern culture, not just agriculturally, but also in terms of food and also in terms of religion. So I think that we could really do some connecting, compare and contrast of American culture to other cultures. And lastly, we could also do a possible goat club, where the kids get a chance to go out and be involved with our goats, and they also get a chance to go out and be in nature.
Okay, so like Elena said, we did have a meeting with some of the GIS teachers last week to brainstorm some ideas of how they could create the goats as a part of their curriculum. As I mentioned before in the food slide, Ms. Wyatt was very interested in studying the minerals used for a goat diet. She even mentioned kind of more grossly, but to studying the food. She was really interested in that. So that's another thing you can look at. But then Elena said for area and such as designing the play structures, math is a really big part of that, and we could involve all grade levels in designing the play structures actually, because we want to try to have a competition almost between the grades to see who could design the best the playhouse. So that would be something that moves into the intermediate school, microscope studying. Soil samples is also a part of 6th grade curriculum, and with the agroforestry area and with the fertilizer that the goats are going to have, that's going to be really changed in the land lab or in that area specifically. Looking at the height, the weight, the food, Mr. Mullingham, they adopted a cow almost, and they are watching the cow grow and stuff like that. So it would be the same thing, except they would have the goats actually available. And anatomy and culture, she already talked about, but the big thing that the teachers were really interested in is using it as a break in the day. A lot of GIS students tend to get tired towards the middle of the day, and it's not as easy as high school to just have that mentality to push through and get done with the day. And so we were talking about a group almost that teachers, if they felt like a kid was having a rough day, they could let them go out and see the goats for a minute. They could almost use a comfort animal or a therapy dog. I know we can't, but there's a lot. They said that if you could do tasks that aren't necessary but could involve the kid and make them feel like they're doing something and helping out, that would probably make their day and make their day a lot better. And so they're trying to decide at the beginning of lunch if they want a group to go out for 5 minutes with the teacher or something like that to just give kids a mental health break in the middle of the day if they're not having that day.
So some other benefits that aren't necessarily academic but are just good for our land and good for the land lab is that when the land lab was built, it took away part of our agricultural system, part of our roots in Granville. So this is a very necessary way to bring back livestock and reintroduce agriculture to that land, but in a sustainable, more innovative way. This also cuts down on mowing too. All of the little trees, I'm sure, are very hard for Mr. Redding to mow around. Not very fun, takes a lot of time. So by having the goats in there, they can eat down all the grass and they can keep weeds down. This would also help our trees grow. Our fruit trees have been there for a while and they have barely grown at all. Part of that is due to deer, part of that is due to poor soil, and part of that is just due to all the weeds underneath it taking the nutrients away. So by having the goats, we would have a fence that's tall enough to keep deer out, hopefully. Another animal in there to claim territory, so that way deer don't go in there with the goats. And a natural fertilizer to the root system. They would also, like I said, eat away the weeds. Yeah, and the fencing allows for less deer to be in there.
Like Ella said, we'll have the 9-week rotation, so each person will take a week, and they'll come every day just to take care of the goats, and we'll continue that over the summer so that they'll have daily care. And for the winter, the shelter will be very safe for them to stay in. Their temperatures won't get too low. The shelter will protect them a lot. And we'll just be taking turns again also in the winter so that they can be constantly taken care of.
This is just kind of a breakdown of our budget. We have just kind of all laid out, and we've already kind of touched on that around there. The care supplies, that kind of just refers hoof trimming, kids and stuff, because we do want to keep their feet nice and healthy. If you don't have good feet, it's very harmful to goats. And then our medical/emergency fund, that's really crucial just in case something happens. They're still animals, they're still going to do things that we're like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? Where was your brain if you were thinking about that? So that's definitely a nice little cushion we're going to need.
When Mr. Redding introduced these projects to us, he first talked about legacy projects, which are basically projects that students start, but then they require more care and more maintenance in later years. And examples of the legacy projects are chickens in our school garden, the land lab as a whole, and then the bee section. And basically, we were planning on making this a legacy project, so then the students in the next years, they can take over and do the everyday care that maybe the little kids don't want to do. And we will mentor the next group next year, as most of us are juniors other than Carly will still be in the school next year. So we can mentor the next group and just give them the rundown on the basics and just how to do the everyday things.
So we have a lot of our community involved out in Columbus, here locally. The first one is Kiwanis. They've been very kind, and we applied for the $500 grant, and they awarded it to us. Mickey's Roofing will be helping us with labor. We have 9 people to help do things, but we don't have the equipment, and we don't have the expertise. Licking County 4-H, this was also a really great connection to make. I met with Lisa McCutcheon, and she was really awesome. She was really cool. She was super excited about this project, and she gave me multiple contact information for other 4-H goat clubs and stuff like that, which was extremely helpful in just getting information, getting like, hey, we can come and help you. Also collaboration opportunities to go to 4-H meetings, have them maybe have a meeting at our shelter, if, you know, whenever it's built and stuff, which would be really cool for them to all see. And then for Ohio State Extension, I also met with Dean Krager out of the Land Lab. Carly, Claire, and I did. And he walked through it and basically just checked all the boxes of the land, like, yes, this is good for livestock. Yes, they can eat that. Yes, this is big enough for them. The area is about 1 acre to 1.5 acres, depending on how far we go out. So we don't want to overpack it with goats. But he estimated that our land can hold about 4 to 6 goats. We're estimating on putting in about 2. So we're about 1/3 to 1/2 of our capacity, which is really awesome. And GIS is super excited to collaborate educationally and interact with the goats.
Yeah, so as Elena mentioned, we met with Dean Krager and Lisa McCutcheon, who are specifically knowledgeable in agriculture, and they both loved our idea. They both saw the land, they were totally down for it. Another big help was Harrison Farms. At the very beginning of the year, very beginning of our project, we all went out to Harrison Farms, which that's actually a picture of us in the bottom corner. But where we kind of were just doing like farm tours all day. But we were also learning about care for the goats and stuff. She has like 300 goats. So it's a little different, but she said that she would be more than happy to teach us the basic things. The basic check, like you have to check their eyes to make sure they're getting enough circulation. You have to trim their foods, all that maintenance, but smaller maintenance stuff we would do ourselves. And she would teach us how to do that. And then some more research we did was through the Tuskegee University Agriculture website, the 4-H Goat Handbook, which literally has everything in it about goats that you ever need to know. And the Stratford Ecological Center was another good place that we came up with natural ways to keep our goats healthy. Like, for example, the sheep, like eating pumpkin, it is like a natural like dewormer for them. So we would be doing stuff like that versus having to like purchase medicines and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we're totally open for questions now. If you have any, I'm sure you do.
Yes.
And
I have a question. If you visited the TLC School for Kids with Autism in Johnstown, they're going to have a llama farm, and they're going to employ their kids after they graduate from high school on the llama farm. And I just bought a brick. So I don't know, but I also want to know how big is your building? Because you said they needed some shelter, and the building looked a little big enough to shelter very many.
So, could you go back to that slide? Okay, I can see. So our shelter is about 8 feet high, so it should be plenty tall for us to walk in there and stuff. In terms of wideness, it's about 12 to 16 feet. So here, this door would be left open at all times, except at night. We would close them in at night. Whoever goes in there to feed them at night would just close the door behind them, just keep them in there at night. So this would be open, so it's 3-sided to just let them come in and out. It's just to let them come in and out as they please. It's about 12 to 16 feet in width and 8 feet in height. And the door on the right, that is totally like a full door, not a half door. That door is to like a storage area, and that is one that just people can go in. That would be totally blocked off from the other side.
So there's room in that shed for all of them in there?
Yes, there's plenty of room. Yeah, I can show you that.
What's the lifespan of the goats?
About 7 to 10 years. Yeah.
Are the gates going to be locked at night or anything?
So we actually had this conversation with intermediate school teachers as well. We wouldn't lock it to keep people out. This is our project, and we are putting trust into our classmates, into our peers, that we can trust people to go in there. Probably the exterior gate would be locked just for animals, but it would be easy for us to open. It'd probably be like an up and down latch. If we had to have a key, most people, all of us would know where the key is. Mr. Redding would know where the key is, but we don't anticipate people being the problem. In terms of animals, yes, we'll probably have definitely lots of latches. And to close them at night, that will most likely be locked. Yep.
So you'll have students come in to take care of them, like feed them and play with them twice a day, or?
So we will visit, we'll come in the morning to feed them in the morning, let them out, give them water, and then we'll come back at night to let them in, feed them, give them water. Throughout the day though, hopefully GIS can have them scrub water buckets and have them do things, give them treats. Have them do things that they don't necessarily need done, you know, you can skip that a couple of days or whatever, but it does definitely need done weekly. You cannot scrub the water bucket too much, so I think that that is a really great way for them to be involved, but not be overfeeding them or anything.
Yeah, that's another part of the educational opportunity, so like a goat club. I know that sounds kind of silly, but
No, it doesn't.
so like a club for students that are interested in agriculture and learning more, and that helps because a lot of the agricultural component of our community, which built this community that we live in, has been lost in schools because, I mean, schools are meant to educate people academically, not agriculturally. And so it implements a whole other educational opportunity with kids, getting them started young, and not necessarily making them into like farmers, but turning them into just people that know what's going on in the world and have more, it's to open up perspective, so.
And I mean, I think it's fantastic. I totally support hands-on learning. Do you find that your peers are equally interested, or do you have underclassmen who are interested in this?
Absolutely. I know that I've talked about this with my friends way more than they would like. But I always bounce ideas off them, but I know they're very excited about it. My brother is a freshman, and he's been bragging about it to all his friends, and they're also excited too. And my sister is in 6th grade, and she's been so excited about it too. So it's definitely spread like wildfire. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, goats.
A lot of people know about it.
Yeah, everyone. So
Like,
I
I
think,
was stopped in the hall today, and someone was like, oh, good luck at your goat presentation.
Exactly.
Like, everyone, like,
It's everywhere right now, and so far we've received pretty positive feedback, a little bit of constructive criticism, but that's only helped us build our presentation.
Yeah.
Thinking about the main predator being a coyote, they can jump. Is the fence high enough?
Yes,
Okay.
it is about 6 feet high. We could go higher if we absolutely need to. That's another reason for having the cameras, to see what does try to get in there, so that way we can fix the problem immediately. Animals are animals, and we're having them outside. They are pets in a way, but they're also still livestock. And if something happens, that would be really sad and really awful, but I mean, there's not really much we can do about it. A coyote working that hard to get in there, I mean, it's going to be a pretty sturdy fence, so they would have to work extremely hard.
Do you have electric already set up for the camera, for the security camera? Or like to keep an eye on them remotely?
The ones we found were battery operated,
Okay.
that connect to your phone. I think they're like off of like the Google technology. So we could try that. If that's not like good enough, we could probably figure something out. But for now, those are the ones that we found.
There's also battery operated trail cameras that you use for like deer hunting. And those have a little SD card. So they're battery operated, and then you come in and get the SD card, plug it into a computer, and you're able to see and clear the SD card and come plug it back in. So that's also another opportunity.
Yeah, and if worse comes to worse and we do need to hook up actual electricity, we are planning on somehow tapping into that box that's right out there. And for the water probe that's going to keep the water warm in the winter. So we can always just, it won't be, if we're already tapping in, like adding an outlet isn't going to be a big problem.
No, I was thinking about monitoring them remotely, like if somebody can't get to them, it's like a snow day or something, and you want to keep an eye on them. I think it's very important to be able to look at them remotely.
Yeah, there's a lot of different, like there's solar power ones, battery operated ones.
We also want to make sure that the intermediate school also has like access to that. because that can be something fun they could do. Like even the
Check in
teachers
the
were
mornings or something.
excited about like having just like being able to check on the goats like on the camera. So we want like obviously us and Mr. Redding to have that access, but also the intermediate school.
Be cute for elementary too, my kids would love that.
Yeah, like a goat cam.
Yeah, check in on them.
Yeah.
Cute. Maybe a field trip or something.
Yes.
So you've solicited from the Kiwanis Club, right? And they're, as usual, very supportive of management schools. I'm a Kiwanis. Are there other ideas for fundraising for the project, or how do you anticipate
Yeah.
funding it?
So right now, we are in contact with a family who has contact with STAMP for a corporation fund, who is willing to give us a large amount of money. We haven't finalized things with them yet, but they've been interested in this project for a while. They reached out to Mr. Wren like a year ago, I think, and they've been interested in funding this project since then. We're trying to set up a time with them to get together, do a presentation with them, to get them fully on board with that and get their approval. But that's the biggest idea. And we have other like small, like fun ones that we could do, like somehow like if like you can like put a name in for like naming the goat for like $1 or something, and you get to like put a name and stuff on, and like we randomly draw it. So like there's a couple like smaller ideas we have, but really it would be coming from corporation donation.
We could also have like accounts like on social media where it wouldn't be like you have to donate for goats, but like have like a link, like if you'd like to donate, you can click here, stuff like that, because obviously like students are excited about this. So if they're excited and they want goats to happen, they could be talking to their parents and their families, and then that's like a way that they could contribute to.
Because I think this is, in addition to what you're talking about with the science kind of aspect of this, I think it's an opportunity to put together a fundraising plan and implementing it. So that's another opportunity for students. So there might be a way to pull in people that might not necessarily are into the goats, but an opportunity to help you with the program. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Thank you so much.
Or for the future, if you guys decide you need, or the next classes decide you need something else, like electric fence, I think you may have that idea. You know, that and that. I'm so impressed, you guys.
I'm
As usual,
so excited.
I think male students are amazing.
It's great that you connected with the intermediate school teachers as well, right? And you thought about educational opportunities across all our schools. That's so fantastic. That's really what we're all about. And I'm just really impressed with the presentation. You seem like you really got addressed all of my questions that I might have had coming in. I think it's also fantastic you connected both with community members as well as other organizations that can support it. And we even have a model, like with our chickens at the high school and things like that. I do have one question. For example, the chickens at the high schools, are those fully maintained by students now, or do they need support from our maintenance or our staff members and things like that? Or how, as a model, I see that kind of working similarly. How are our current chickens maintained?
Yeah, so in the summer classes, Mr. Redding teaches the summer gardening classes, and the students take care of them then. Although during like the winter and the school year, he goes in and checks in on them every once in a while. But it's really like we try to do the best we can with students running that, but obviously every once in a while he has to step in there.
Yeah, I can speak real quickly. So right now in the winter part, I've been doing quite a bit of it. But in the spring and the fall, we have other classes in high school that are actually going out and doing the vast majority of the work. In fact, they're feeding, taking the eggs into the cafeteria. I mean, I can be completely hands off. We're working with the MH group, and so they have a little harder time this time of year getting out there and doing the things that have to be done. So I just fill in the gap there.
That's fantastic. I'm really impressed by this opportunity and things like that, and I appreciate you bringing it to us as well. You know, I don't think it needs a vote or anything like that. I'm sure that our administration will manage things appropriately.
A nod of approval is good enough for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and the grant opportunities are fantastic. I'm sure there's lots in the community that really support cool opportunities for education like this that people want to step up and help out, so.
Yeah, don't forget about the Granville Education Foundation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I'd suggest Mr. Mullenkamp would be a great goat club advisor.
One more question. So this is in someone's backyard.
Yes.
Did you want to mention that you talked with?
I did.
Okay.
Before we even got the ball rolling on this, I reached out to the Graffs, who do live in the house with that blue roof that's like, it's about a football field away from the bed, like where we're putting them from their house. I emailed them. They said they were totally on board with it, totally fine with the goats being there, so. We
And
won't have any problem.
They're not necessarily noisy.
No.
You'll hear the occasional baa.
Other than that,
We are not getting the screaming goats or the fainting goats.
No.
Well, I think this is another example of project-based learning, legacy projects, getting students engaged in something that they're passionate about. And a lot of the work that you mentioned has been done outside of the school day. And I think that that's a testament to your commitment to the project. So thank you very much for coming tonight. And look forward to hearing an update as you progress in this project. So thank you very much. Well done. And as they transition out, we'll introduce Molly McCurry and Mamie Gurney, our instructional coaches at the elementary and intermediate school, who are going to talk a little bit about their role as instructional coaches and literacy. Yep.
Thanks for the presentation, you guys. We do things a little differently.
Feel ready?
It's hard to follow. We're not using that. It is hard to follow the goats, but
In a friend. It's kind of funny, the goats actually play really well to what we want to show you today.
it's true.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. It's meant to be.
We're super loud.
Are you giving me ideas for tomorrow for lesson plan?
I was thinking of my third grade class that whole time that last year that I had, they would have been, they would be itching to be in the goat.
Oh, it's the talk with the intermediate school.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't know, but they'll.
It is. The teachers are like, we're getting goats?
The goats.
What? I want it.
The goats.
I mean, you name it, they can come up with something, an educational connection. I mean, it's really impressive.
Yeah. Oh, this is good. Well, I'm Mandy Curry. I'm the instructional coach at the elementary school.
And I'm Molly McCurry. I'm supposed to stand over there.
Oh,
I told
okay.
you to stand over here. Great. I'm Molly McCurry. I'm the instructional coach at the intermediate school. So we kind of tag team things together.
We do. We try to work as a team and keep our K-6 vision going and connect those two schools. But yeah, today actually we're going to tell you a story, and the story takes us on a journey into the land lab. And now, in the story, it's going to include goats.
Yes, it is.
And so we are having a science learning day, and we all set up to go on this walking field trip through the land lab, and we're wanting to learn about our animals, the goats, and study their anatomy and take good care of them. But we also have some portrait of a graduate things in mind.
I mean, as great teachers, and you all being our students, we really designed this hike and this learning experience with those portrait of graduate traits in mind, right? So we're obviously going to be collaborating as we, are going along this journey, right? We are definitely going to have to be adaptable because there's going to be a big puddle over here, and thing.
Go poop.
Right? So we got to go around that, right? We definitely need to be responsible and stay with our class, following the teacher's instructions, doing all those things. We're going to have to do a lot of critical thinking, Mandy. Like thinking about if I'm calculating the area of this goat pen, it is not a rectangle. So that's going to be some critical thinking that I'm doing. I'm going to have to show empathy to my fellow classmates. And as teachers, we're going to be exercising empathy towards all of our students when they're tired or thirsty or stepped in goat poo. I think also
all of our experiences that we design for students, we want to build that resiliency in them, right? Like, boy, that like grit that comes through, you know, I work through hard problems. So we have designed this hike with you all in mind. Okay.
And so the hike went really well, but we did run into some problems.
Yeah, so the first problem that we ran into is Brad Wolf was kind of wandering a little bit over to the side and wasn't quite going where he was supposed to go, and he landed in some poison ivy. Told you to stay away from there.
But we're going to give you some medicine. Rana O'Day, you did a great job on the hike, and you just got your a little bit of a cut. Okay. Just a little bit of a cut.
Good job.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. So Brittany got finished with the hike, and you know, by the time she was done, she was like, "Oh, my head is hurting so badly." She had a really bad headache.
Amy Deeds, you're so healthy. Everything is great. The hike went so well for you, and we are glad you're doing well.
Yeah, Mr. Miller, the hike was sometimes challenging for you when we were making observations because you're colorblind, and so sometimes that made some of those like observations that we were trying to take for the science piece a little bit difficult for you.
Yeah. And Sister Shaw, we just had a moment where you got a little dehydrated. We've got a plan, and you're going to be just fine.
And then Mr. Brown, unfortunately, when you were going down into, you know, this part of the land lab, you stepped in a wrong spot, and you rolled and you broke your ankle. I did fling you over my shoulder to carry you back.
That's what teachers do.
Yeah.
But this is good news. We like to be prepared, and so you each have a first aid kit. And so when I hand you your first aid kit, you can open it up, see if you can start giving yourself some medical care that you might need, and we'll get you all fixed up.
So in the first aid kits, we have a Band-Aid, we have an alcohol wipe, cotton ball, aspirin, and a cup for water.
You may think there's candy in there. It's not. It's aspirin.
Right. So, yeah, with aspirin packed in there.
So as you are looking through your first aid kit and you're considering your struggle that you came across on the hike, who has what they need? 3 people have what they need. Who is left wanting?
I have one, I'm sorry. Remember, I wandered off the path.
Yeah, I think you're left wanting also. I don't know. Poison ivy.
Is that an alcohol wipe? I think it's the alcohol.
Yeah. Maybe. This is like maybe some medical care, but it might not be enough for you. Yeah, it might not be enough for you.
So if what you got right here was what we gave all of you, no matter what your struggle, what your problem, what your issue was, that would be terrible care. It would be terrible care. Oh yeah, it worked out for a few people, but it really didn't work out so well for some of us, right? That would be terrible care. In the same way, if we treated all of our students with the exact same teaching or methodology, that would be terrible instruction. The great news is that that's not what happened here. You know, here we are. This is the amazing thing about Granville schools. So a few of you who had what they needed, okay, so a few of you, like the regular instruction in Granville schools is going to meet your needs. Like typical, every day, you're in the classroom because guess what? We have teachers who are meeting with small groups, who are conferring with you one-on-one, who are, you know, targeting their instructions to meet your needs already. You're getting exactly what you need. Great. So we have some people who are already healthy. They're like, this guy did nothing for me. You know, Amy's leading the pack, right? So that teacher in our classroom is going to be recognizing this student and giving her opportunities to set her own goals, to be challenged, right? To really be able to grow. And this is what our teachers are doing for our students who need that kind of next level of
leadership and of self-selected and self-directed goals. And then we have some students over here. Jeff Brown's going to need a little bit more support. And we have some students who are going to need a greater level of sustained support for a longer amount of time before they can get back and be running around with everyone else again. So, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit out of breath.
Yeah. Not animated at all.
Some of us, I'm starting carrying around a child and can't breathe. Okay.
Do you want some
water? No. I just get too excited. So for people in the classroom who need that sustained level of support, we're bringing together a group of teachers in an RTI or response to intervention team where we can target specific strategies and instruction to be able to help those students get back on track, get where they need to be, get back into the swing of things with everyone else.
Granville, poison ivy is treatable, right? But it can also be get out of control if left unchecked. And so we know that just like you might need specialized medication, that some of our students might need a specialized form of instruction. And they can absolutely keep up with their peers. They can still access the hike. And sometimes it's even for a short amount of time. The medication isn't going to last long, and it is going to give them what they need, and they will be well. And then to be colorblind is something that we had to consider when we entered the hike. We know that this has always been with you, Mr. Miller, and we knew that we wanted you to have a good experience and learn what everybody else learned. And so we gave you access to the same education, but we had to give you accommodations. And so all of these things are really important for a teacher to consider, to think, what does each child need, what does each person need, and that care and that instruction is going to be different from one to the next. So we're so glad you went on this hike with us.
Aren't you glad?
Yes.
We're so glad.
No, I'm not. I know it's my fault because I won.
We're so glad we got to see the goats with you, and we're especially glad that we could provide for you each different thing that you need, and that we are not stopping with just the first aid kits, that we have more to offer you, and that each of you are going to be able to continue well in your education.
So it's interesting, the pandemic for all of us has stripped away a lot of things, kind of really made us reconsider, and when it came down to it, as we're staring at these 600, kids, plus kids in each of our buildings, we're like, what is most important? And we just kept coming back to these kind of two grounding questions. What do we want kids to learn? And who do we want them to be as people, right? This is our POG right here. Who do we want kids to be? And how do we want to teach them? And so the awesome thing is we have these amazing teachers on the ground, right? If we're on a hike, our teachers are the medics who are on the ground, throwing the kid over their shoulder, treating the child with poison ivy, giving a hand where they need to give. That's what our teachers do. And for Mandy and I, it's really fun because as coaches, we get to kind of come alongside these teachers as they're working with our students. And we do that in some different ways. It could be hey, teachers, let's plan on, we're about to go on this hike. Let's plan this hike together. Let's plan how we're going to challenge this student who is really healthy. Let's plan how we're going to make those accommodations for that student who is colorblind. So we can do that, before the hike. We could also do that in the midst. Hey, I'm going to come on this hike with you. That's something we do. Mandy and I will go in and teach a lesson with teachers in their classrooms. They'll say, man, I really feel like I keep making my mini lessons so long it's taking away this time. And we'll say, let me come in. And they'll have us, and we'll kind of co-teach and tag team teach with them, which is so fun. And then also, sometimes our role as coaches looks like we're that debriefing, processing partner afterwards. Hey, how'd that go? When you're a teacher, sometimes it's really isolating because no one gets to see you. You need to be able to process that.
Or your specific students.
Right.
In that moment, in that month, in that year.
Yeah. So you need that person to kind of process with afterwards, to reflect, to be able to grow. and better your practice. So we're kind of those people who get to step alongside our teachers and those professional growth opportunities right in the moment, live.
So consider how it felt when you first didn't get the care that you needed. And then consider how it felt to then know that you were recognized, that you were cared for, and that you had what you needed. And we feel like that's what we do in Granville schools. We're very proud of it. Responsive teaching, responsive instruction is very important to us. It means that each child is not one size fits all. It means that we don't just know a child for a year, we know a child from moment to moment, and that we make important decisions for what they need in that moment. And while that sounds like it is a lack of planning, it's actually an incredibly important piece of learning beforehand. It is a craft and it's a skill. Because if you know your craft well as a teacher, then you're able to respond right now, already knowing what that kid needs in that moment. And we think that is incredibly special in our buildings. And think about, we were 7 people on a hike, and our teachers have like 22 to 29 students. And so the diverse needs are even greater, but they are still so committed to responsive instruction. And we think that our students have an incredible learning experience because of it.
And we did want to invite you all as board members, come in and see it. Because you sometimes sit there in a class and you're like, this is amazing. You know, you watch a teacher who, you know, they don't know what a kid is going to say or ask or do. And the way that they are able to pivot and the way that they are able to navigate and adapt to meet the needs of the kids in that moment is just really incredible. We have some amazing, amazing people here.
Coaching to us is a great privilege, and we like being the people who are in it with them. When the teachers are like up to their elbows and feeling like the medics on the ground, like we're in there with them. And we felt that even more so in the pandemic, and a more urgency to be with them. And so, yeah, you're welcome anytime to come and see the great teaching that they all do. We'd love to have you. Thanks for having us tonight. Thank you.
So, one of the things that I think every great teacher does is think with intentionality. And I think what you just witnessed is the intentionality behind some of the things that we're trying to create as far as cultural norms within our organization. And thank you for choosing me, being the broken ankle. Yes. But the intentionality that our teachers use and the intentionality of having coaches is something that betters all the instructors in the organization. We're not perfect. No one is. But I think we're very intentional in what we do. And that's in a large part to Mandy and Mom and all the other staff members. So thank you for coming. We
Any
appreciate
questions
it.
for us? Thank you.
I have a question. Are we allowed to come visit?
So we've been waiting, but
Well, you're going to
yes.
get some horses now,
Didn't
right?
ask for it.
Yeah. Which is pretty typical within the organization. But yes, I do think we are going to set up some board member opportunities to visit the buildings. I think coming out of the pandemic, it's important. So to reconnect in totality. So I think that would be a great opportunity.
I'd just like to add, before COVID hit, I was able to go to the elementary school.
It was like 4 days before. Remember that?
Yeah.
Maybe
And-
2 days.
He might have been blamed for bringing COVID.
It's the wolf fiber.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. I walked out of there, and especially since my kids are grown and out, it was wonderful to see, and it was exciting to see how the students reacted and the teachers and the pride and the commitment that everybody in that building had. It was, I was on cloud 9 walking out of there. It was really a great experience, And I was planning on going to the intermediate school, and then the wolf virus hit. I couldn't do it, but I'm glad to hear, if you have the chance to do it, it's great. It's fantastic. And thank you for tonight. And thanks a lot for the poison ivy.
You're welcome. Don't worry, you got the medication. You're fine. All better.
Well, Brittany, I hate to do this to you, but you get to follow that. So I'm sure you have a headache now, but let's go ahead and dive into the monthly financial report.
I always get set up. I just follow good.
You better be as exciting as Molly on these numbers.
Right. So January financial report. First graph we have here is always our cash balance. So we're comparing the cash balance by month for this year compared to last year. So we are in January, and this is the low point. The line also represents the variances in the cash balance as that decreases throughout the year and then builds back up again. This cyclical process that we see each year. So January is the low point, but we're still 6.1 million above where we were last year. This is the phasing of the income tax and then the carryover cash balance that we had from last year moving into this year. Looking at revenue, just for the month of January compared to last January, local tax revenue is up. That's due to the income tax increase. State revenue, I hope to have a little bit longer discussion of that and how it compares to the forecast at our next meeting. But for now, ODE has now implemented the new funding formula, and they have caught us up for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. So that's why we see such a significant variance in that line item. That's largely due to the Student Wellness and Success Funds being part of general fund now. They were previously in a separate fund that was not included in the forecast or in our monthly financial report here. So those are the two variances for this month. And then year to date, we're seeing the same issues carry through to a lesser extent, because we will start to see the state revenue will level out. We're not going to continue to receive that amount that we saw every single month throughout the year, but we will have a variance due to that wellness and success funds. And then local tax revenue being up as well. Then on the expenditure side, salary and benefits up slightly. That's just the normal steps and base increases that we have each year. And then all other expenses are up. Part of this is a timing issue with our lease purchase payment that was made in December last year, so it's just throwing off the year-over-year comparison. And then we do have a slight increase in the income tax collection fees. That's percentage based off of how much revenue we receive, so that will increase when the revenue increases as well. So those two items are that $150,000. On the year-to-date expenditures, we are adjusting each month for the known variances that are significant. So the insurance issue last July that I've talked about, and tuition charges and how that's changed. We no longer have those as expenditures on our books under the new funding formula. So after adjusting for those two items, expenditures are up about $900,000, which is in alignment with the forecast, but is different than what shows up here when you compare year over year. There will always be variances, there will always be timing issues, things like that, but since those are two pretty significant items, we wanted to show that, so we have a more apples to apples comparison. Okay. I know this is incredibly hard to read, but I'm just going to zoom in on the General Assembly allocation here. So this is, again, the General Assembly had an allocation of ESSER funds that they are utilizing to bring each district up to $1,000 per student. So for us, that's actually more than we received in any of the other rounds of ESSER. And the use and timing provisions, there's two different parts. part falls under the ESSER 2 rules and timing, and part falls under ESSER 3. So we do have a portion here that is under staffing that will be used for intervention positions at the elementary and intermediate school next year. And then 1.1 million for facilities improvements for HVAC work, specifically air handler 1 and 2 at the elementary, which we'll talk about more on a later agenda item as well. So looking at this information graphically is a little easier to digest. So the total height of each bar here is the total amount allocated under each of those sources. The blue is how much we've actually expended to date, and then the orange is how much is remaining to spend. We'll likely have a majority of this spent by the end of next school year. And then we've updated the pie chart to include how we're spending that general assembly allocation, so it's increased the staffing and then the facilities improvements sections in the pie.
What do you mean by increased staffing? Can you just
So we are adding, depending on, so the allocation is about 120,000. Depending on who we hire, where they fall on the salary schedule, and whether they take benefits or not, will depend on how many people specifically we'll be able to cover under that allocation. But it'll be a teaching position specifically for math and reading intervention at the elementary and intermediate school.
It's a permanent position?
It is not a permanent position because the funding is tied specifically to the ESSER dollars, so it's not guaranteed to continue. Of course, we would, we could make the choice to include that in the general fund going forward if it's found that that's a need that we need to continue. But it's specifically designed to address the learning loss associated with COVID. Okay, last page here is a cash reconciliation, but just want to highlight one item. We now have the Red Tree, the investment contract that you all approved in December. We now have funds with them, so they are working to get those invested so that we can start earning some interest on those inactive funds. And the amount that we came up with there, we basically looked at the cash balance graph and said, okay, how much are we above where we were last year at our low point, and took that amount and invested it. We do have some more liquidity in some of these other line items, so there's not a real concern that, from a cash flow perspective, that we wouldn't have the funds when we need them. So that is what we felt comfortable with right now, and just wanted to highlight that. Any other questions?
I just have a quick question. When you talk about the expenses being up around, 310,000, what do you, compared to last year, what do you, what does that come from?
It's primarily in salaries and benefits. So we have our steps and our base increases that are part of the negotiated agreement. But also, if you think back to last year, we approved the bargaining agreement late. So we approved it in November. So that increase that was due to staff, owed to staff, for their time worked from August through November, we ended up paying that on the last pay of their contract, which would have been in August, so it actually fell in this fiscal year. So it's artificially inflating salaries a little bit in this fiscal year compared to last as well. So it's higher this year and lower last year. So again, that's one of those not apples to apples comparisons that we know and can articulate, but it makes the year over year a little bit harder.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and we know we announced that ESSER General Assembly allocation last month and things like that. That's a really big deal. That's a big chunk of money that we're getting. $1.3 million extra money is fantastic that we're finding a great way to allocate it. I know we talk about that a little bit later in the meeting and so forth, but that's something that we need to keep highlighting, is that we're really thankful for that.
Yeah, it's huge, and thanks to the Alliance for their work and advocacy to utilize those dollars in that way, so that districts like Granville can still benefit from the ESSER dollars, and it is significantly helping our permanent improvement budget as well, which is a nice added bonus.
Who did you say, thanks to who?
The Alliance for
High quality
High
education.
Quality Education.
It's a group of
Justice
districts that we
Fair.
participate in, and there's probably 100,
They-
77
Yeah, they hosted the lunch.
Yeah, I went to that.
Yeah, yep.
I just,
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brittany. Now we've come to the time in our agenda where we welcome public comments. Anyone that would wish to speak to the board may step to the podium, state your name and address, and offer a message of up to 5 minutes. Seeing if there's none now, thank you very much. We can proceed with the board discussion.
Okay, I'd like to frame the discussion real quick. So this is our first board meeting since the announcement of Intel coming into Licking County. Obviously, it was a big deal. The President of the United States talked about it. Governor and many of the people within his cabinet were a part of that process. Growth is going to be coming to Licking County based on that project announcement. It's not just going to be in Johnstown or New Albany or Licking Heights. It's going to be something that impacts the entire county. Couple that with some of the other things that have been happening here locally, the River Road development conversation with the 2 properties on River Road that are, one is sold, the other is in discussions about selling. So, that's something that we've talked about. I've gone to the Newark Council. That plot design is already approved. So now the conversation is with the developers and how to increase green space, open space, and reduce density to try and minimize the impact on the schools. But I think it's an important time for us to engage in a deeper dive of strategic planning around enrollment, facility capacity, programming, and some other things that I think are the Intel announcement can be a catalyst for that strategic planning. Tomorrow I plan on talking to a group that has done a couple of different enrollment and facility capacity studies in the area, more specifically recently just in Southwest Licking, but also in Johnstown, to kind of look at our demographics specifically, but I think there's interest in all the Licking County school districts to look at a regional analysis as well, facilitated potentially by the ESC. So I wanted to put that out there publicly, knowing that we probably need to take this next step of being a little bit more proactive, knowing that that's on the horizon. Typically what we do as a board and as an administration is engage our community members in those conversations. We have a lot of expertise in the community, whether it's in construction, fiscal management, business development. We have a lot of really great community members that help on a lot of different committees. And so I'm envisioning some type of task force that will look at this issue as well and come back to the board and report on it. I know, Ms. Deeds has already offered as a board representative to, be on the task force. Again, probably our most historical, knowledgeable board member. So having a long history here in Granville and Licking County. So I think that's, I wanted to get your thoughts and any things that you think that this group should potentially pursue. So that's the floor. Open to any conversation.
One thing that I would like to do some research on is the prospective employees of Intel. Are they, young couples? who are about to have kids, or, bring kids into our school system, or, that's something, obviously, the demographic aspect of that. My husband, Pavel, has given a talk on Intel coming here as an economist, and he would be willing to be on this task force as well, or just provide any kind of, as an economist, his expertise, professional opinion.
That would be excellent. And I know that they actually announced their first round of hiring has been posted, so we're hoping to try and get a little bit more interaction with the team that's kind of working on this, to look at the impact on the schools, and so that we understand kind of, who are they looking for. I believe that the way we work on our Blue Aces and shape our learners, it might be advantageous to them, long term, to work with us now for future employees. So I think that would be a great idea, to look at the demographic of the prospective employees.
And also to look at, maybe you all know this already, but the kinds of jobs that they're hiring for, and the salaries they're offering, because that's definitely going to play into where people are going to live and what our community needs to prepare for in terms of potential new housing, or people are going to be coming in here making a ton of money. There are certainly some houses here that fit that bill. So what does that look like?
Yeah, Follow told me that because of the intense amount of care that the employees will have to do with creating the chips or whatever, it's a very sensitive manufacturing process. He said that it will likely be highly trained, high income employees. So I think one of the most important things will be, are they newly trained young employees who will have kids, or are they already established in this trade and have already had kids through a school system somewhere else?
And they have built a fab in a new location in Arizona recently, so we can look at that and try and dig into the impact. Obviously, a lot of things go into their decision to, select Licking County, but I agree with, I think we're going to have a little bit of everything, but mostly highly trained, highly skilled workforce.
And their announcement was 6,000 employees with an average salary of $135,000. Right, so that's quite different than anywhere else, right?
And I don't think that
research with LinkedIn. I know a lot of people that worked at Intel and the Oregon facility and so forth, and it's kind of just curious. You can do some searching by selecting an area, like their facility area in Arizona, and you look at the number of employees, you look at the education level and things like that. And, $135,000 as an average salary is pretty impressive, right? And it will change this area of Ohio, right, and the country for that matter. The scope of the development that's being proposed is really significant.
Even if they promise to be hiring from Licking County, I don't think they will be.
I'm sure there will be lots of hires from Licking County and lots from all over, right? And it's not like, my imagination is they won't be pulling kids straight out of high school and things like that, right? Jobs that pay $135,000 are probably more highly trained jobs, right? Either later in their career or from some kind of specialty thing. And I know that it'll be really important in Licking County to continue the pipeline. I see our schools as having an influence here, education. I see OSU Newark. I see all the educational organizations around here, and certainly Ohio State is very central in the planning process. So I think there's going to be a big drive for local hire just from a logistic perspective. You're not going to hire people from Silicon Valley all to come here and fill those 6,000 jobs, right? I think they chose this area of the country specifically, right, because they believe they can have a base of employees. That's a critical thing these days, right? Some might already be from Licking County, but I'm sure there will be a lot more coming in. That's really where the growth comes from. And how we think of ourselves as a community in that is really important, right? So I would, strongly encourage us to establish this task force, right? Not an Intel task force, but really a strategic planning track task force, right? And I would even do that before we we engage external resources to some extent, because I think the assumptions you start analysis with are important influences on the outcome of the analysis, right? And I'd really like to see this community group come together and be an intimate part of this data gathering process. So I think how we prioritize the information we're looking for. You know, we've done studies of enrollment growth before, right? And I think you can get out of those studies sort of whatever you want to some extent, influenced by the assumptions that you make. And I think we're better positioned as a community to have our individual community members help with those assumptions and bracket those kinds of possibilities that could be a part of the future. I'd like to see it potentially involve some board work sessions as well, because I think this is important for all of us to stay on top of, to the extent that it influences our educational model, and our taxation is going to have huge influences of potential development, even to the extent that we have a development over in Newark right now that could bring a lot of homes and students to us, that's forcing us to really think about schools. So this is something that I think the whole board should be engaged in some process. I think the task force has probably got a lot of other experts in our community, and it's wonderful Mrs. Dietz is willing to offer her perspective. I would really like to be on that task force as well, and I think the sooner the better, right? Because shovels are going to the ground, and things are starting to sort of change because of this already, and it was announced like less than a month ago. But it's a big deal for this part of Ohio, and so thank you for kind of getting a head start on this.
And I think that notion of work sessions is important, because it is important to bring the entire board along in that conversation.
We can't farm this out to a consultant, right? Sure. We can't even just farm it out to a subcommittee. I think this is something that's going to be integral to a lot of our work as a Board of Education over the next 10 years.
So as a board, I have a couple of questions, but as a board, when you say a board work session, does that mean like two on, the way we do the 2 by 2s, or is that like a whole group being able to
There
talk
are a couple
about?
different formats for meetings, right? And one of them is a monthly meeting like this, but for many topics, we get the group together and it's a public meeting. And I would suggest we have a public meeting, maybe with the task force, which would include many community members, where the 5 of us there will have a meeting. It's more of a discussion format, and it has a structured agenda, and Mr. Brown has done these on several topics in the past. And it's a good way just for everybody to be on the same page, but not to be as formal as typically an agenda in a monthly meeting is.
So as a work session, is it simply board speaking, or is it also public comment?
There is public comment allowed in work sessions. It's much more.
There's a lot of flexibility. You can have breakout groups, and you could do other kinds of things. You can invite public comment, and it's a much more collaborative, constructive environment, right, typically, but it's a public meeting of the board, right?
Typically, there are no action items associated with it.
Yeah. So then, sorry, I got to stop on that.
No, that's fine.
No,
Actually, how meetings work.
Yeah.
The other thing I just was thinking was that with our superintendent committees, it's also probably a good idea to have this kind of like percolating in people's heads, in all those committees. I assume this should, will be part of that. Then, Mr. Brown, you talked about, something that I have heard mentioned here before, facility capacity. So just if we could, kind of throw that out there for a minute and just talk about what our capacity is now and when we need to start thinking about a new building. And then the other thing you mentioned was programming, and I was just curious what you meant by that.
So, 2 things. So related to the capacity of the building, enrollment's going to drive facility needs. And so one of the things we need to do is understand the impact and the magnitude of land availability. Is that an imminent threat of development, those types of things? What is the typical yield? All those things are part of the comparative strategies or cooperative strategies groups kind of detail that they dive into as far as the demographics of the area. And that will facilitate the conversation about facilities. When I talk about programming, we offer several different things that I think would be advantageous for a student that wanted to pursue a field like Intel provides. CTEC does as well. So CTEC, Columbus State, OSU Newark, Ohio State, main campus, Licking County Schools, talking a little bit about you know, what are some of the things that we do, and should we tweak any of them to align with, you know, giving students an advantage in the marketplace. You know, we have a computer science, you know, department here, so things like that.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I just thought about the goats and thought,
Yeah.
is this gonna impact our boats?
You have a great network of superintendents and administrators around the country and things like that. I wonder if it would be possible to connect with a school district in a place like Arizona where they recently built a new plant, just to kind of get a perspective on when they put this stuff on the ground 10 years ago and brought in 6,000 employees. How did that feel? Right, and I'm not sure how to get that connection, but I know you're well connected. It might be interesting to kind of hear that, to kind of get a preview a little bit, and every circumstance is different, but it might be
The network that we are a part of at Theater 21, they have a main site in Arizona. So we'll be able to reach out to them and get connected to those school districts.
It's like each little nugget I hear, you know, really brings home what a big deal this is, right? It's like they're thinking about like a new outer belt around all of this infrastructure. It's like, wow, that's different, right? To think about just the magnitude of the traffic and the magnitude of the opportunity for development if it's structured appropriately, because it's going to come to some extent. I think it sort of shifts the center of central Ohio a little bit to the northeast, all right, and that's going to influence Granville. And we have always been such a great, strong community that's focused on high-quality education that I see no way that that's going to change, right? And I see lots of opportunities for us to really shine through this process, continue to show what Granville has, and reinforce that as the community grows around this part of Ohio. So I'm excited and looking forward to it, and know that we need to get a lot of resources in our community thinking about it, you know, sooner rather than later. So let's this task force and make the invitations and get a first meeting, and then get some external consultants to generate data that we need to make important decisions.
So is there something you think that I might be able to reach out to the state for, like if we need new facilities, do we need to expect all of that to come from taxpayers in our school district? Or is there a way that the state can say, okay, we just dropped this gigantic, you know, manufacturing business here, it's going to affect your schools? I think that it is within, you know, our, I think it's appropriate to expect the state to help compensate for that.
So the state has a program that helps school districts with facility construction, so the Ohio Facility Construction Committee. And there is an articulated process. A lot of that is wealth-based. But having said that, there might be consideration for something of this magnitude being impacted by OFCC. That's something that we can definitely look at. But, you know, I know Licking Heights enjoyed a pretty decent match of state funds with their new high school project. And so that helps offset the taxpayers' burden.
I'd be willing to help with that.
Okay. And I think we already have a little bit of a financial sustainability question that's been circulating around, certainly in our last few levies, right? We're not, you know, with the high level of residential tax base right now, people feel frustrated and feel as if they're paying a very high tax rate. And I've heard many people express they don't know what the sustainability of that looks like. And with this potential change in our extended community, I think we need to do a lot of good scenario planning. You know, what does it look like with additional students or additional commercial development, which will come as auxiliary to this? You know, I mean, you've got one big plant going in there, but there's lots of other businesses that circulate and surface around these kinds of operations that potentially would be more suited for the kinds of spaces that we would have available. Right, so there's not a lot of acreage of space here for either residential or commercial development, but I think we can choose carefully the space that we have and work with our partners in the township and village who will be intimately involved with us, I'm sure, to, you know, make sure that we're positioning those right, you know, as this change happens around us.
What do you mean there's not that much space?
I mean, if you look at the acreage, I've talked to both trustees and village council people, and when we talk about commercial development, being, a solution to our financial problems in the school district. There's not that many acres of commercial real estate available. We don't have.
No, the issue is the residential acreage available.
True, residential acreage changes both our residential tax base as well as our students, but supplementing our residential base with commercial base, right, could help diversify the tax base, right, which is happening, potentially along the 16 corridor where we've long had a strategic plan that talks about commercial development.
Right, but I think the danger right now is the amount of potential residential build out. That's
And the magnitude of that, yeah.
I would like to return to, it sounded as though you expect that a fair amount of the 6,000 employees and their families may not be as local as.
As they're claiming, correct.
Right.
I don't think that we will have a majority of, I don't think the majority of the employees will be from Lincoln County. Just because of the high level of skill and training that they need to have, they're not going to want to come in and train 6,000 people. Yeah. They might eventually start to hire more people from Lincoln County. They're not going to start with 6,000 Lincoln County employees.
I've been having a hard time, and I've seen this figure in multiple news articles, in multiple newspapers. I'm having a hard time understanding what the range of salaries is going to be if the average, which is the only figure one has seen, is $135,000, because that's a huge number for an average of 6,000 employees.
Yeah.
When you think about
Is that even
fab,
conceivable?
yeah. When you think about a fab plan, which is what they're installing, right?
Yes.
I mean, the janitor is wearing a very high performance clean room suit and needs to be protected and trained to a higher level, right? So that, there's not a lot of $20 an hour jobs here, right? That way off extremely high paying jobs, even the entry level jobs, if you will. And there's not a lot of janitors required. It's not like they're making trash in their bedrooms, but still, just the basic capabilities of working in a facility like this with that kind of level of clean room are pretty high level, right? And if you think about that 6,000 employees, there's several thousand of them that are engineer trained, right? And there aren't a couple thousand engineers in Lincoln County right now that have experience in clean rooms that are just looking for jobs, So those are,
That's exactly
yeah,
the point.
exactly.
Yes.
Right, which is, that's the reality, right? If there were, that'd be great, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that short term.
And I think you are all demonstrating why we need a task force.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions that are circulating in a lot of minds. And that's, I think, why we want to move forward in this direction.
Yeah, I think we need to be really proactive, and I'm glad we are. And I'm glad to hear we're going to be collaborative in the county. I think that's really important because it's going to not just affect us or Johnstown, it's going to affect this whole county.
The whole state, really. I mean, I want to take it to the state.
But we need to be, ahead of this and engaging with all the partners or potential partners. And I'm really glad we're going to go get the demographic information to start with. I want to see what they're seeing, and what you shared with us from Southwest Licking I thought was really interesting. And I like knowing I want paint on the canvas and see. I like having data up front and going forward. So I'm excited about it. There's going to be a lot of challenges, but I think the opportunity's here, and we've got to engage in it and stay ahead of the curve as much as we can. So I compliment you for doing that.
Great, yeah, it's exciting news, so thank you for putting that together.
Excellent. Okay, that takes us to our board action items. The first one, 9.01, is the approval of the board policies as second reading and approval. We only have three, really two, but the first is the public participation in board meetings modification that we articulated, and the inclusion of financial literacy in the graduation requirements in the board policy. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
questions?
As we review these last month, right? Okay. Take the roll, please.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds? Aye. Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the gifted handbook.
So moved.
Second.
So this is, there are literally, I think, 5 words that change in the handbook, just to keep updated with some of the things that happen down at OEE. So nothing material.
Thank you. Roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Okay, 9.03 is the approval of the GHS course description book.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so one of the things that has changed significantly is the graduation requirements. Obviously, we talked about financial literacy, but there's been this concept of graduation seals. And so we built the seals for the 22-23 school year, and we built those into the course description book. We also are making the AP chemistry class a 2-credit class because it does meet 2 periods a day. So some little things, but we're actually starting the scheduling process now for next year. So we're in that mode. So this is the next step.
What's your sense about how these seals will impact us? Is that going to be central and significant for us, or is that going to be not as much of a focus? I'm just kind of curious how that's going to roll out around.
I think the majority of our students will meet the graduation requirements through traditional manner, or means, meaning they'll get enough credits and take enough courses and take enough state assessments to get their 18 required 20. What is it now?
Just 2 classes.
What's that?
Algebra 1 and ELA 2 to start with, and then
Yeah.
the seals after that.
Yeah, so they're gonna get their requirements. The seals, I think they're an opportunity for students that have, other ways that they need to get the graduation requirements satisfied, so. But I
So
think
they're not going to be a primary focus for the majority of our students, and is it going to be
I don't know.
thing we're
Mr. Knapp, do you
kids
wanna-
are worried about? Like,
Yeah, I would say, just to put numbers to it, I would say we have less than 10 juniors that we're concerned about where they are with seals right now.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a significant impact on our student population. However, if there's a certain seal that they want to pursue, then there will be certain requirements that are outlined in this that they would have to have. And most of our students are going to get it by passing the biology test for science and then passing the U.S. history and American government test. That'll encompass most students. We also will have another state seal for students that want to take a technology course, and that'll be our programming 1 course that's year-long in coordination with CTEC. So they're helping us develop a course for students that maybe can't get one of those state seals to dip into the world of technology, and that's a state, a recognized seal right now that we'll have in place starting next year.
Is that a new class that wouldn't be in our course
No,
catalog?
it's a new concept in terms of what's taught in that particular class, but it's going to be very much like programming 1 and 2 that we already have at the high school, with a few little additions.
Okay, questions? Take the roll, please.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Thank you. 9.04 is the approval of the membership resolution for OHSAA.
Second.
This is an annual membership authorization.
Thank you. Take the roll, please.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
The next item is 9.05, approval of an agreement with Flagler and Son for urgent necessity related to the renovation project.
So moved.
So we have a couple of urgent necessity resolutions. Urgent necessity is a concept that we can get multiple quotes, but don't have to go through the entire bid process. But we are getting multiple quotes for all of this work, and then to comparing those quotes to see what's most advantageous. But this is, I think right now, we're seeing significant lag time in procuring materials for projects. And so the bid process can be a little bit lengthy, and we're needing to get this work scheduled. And that is problematic when the materials aren't available. So you'll see a couple of those urgent necessity resolutions. I don't know if you want to add to that. Okay. So
the ones within the financial agenda as well?
These are all action items with the addendum. Yeah.
Oh, the addendum, right.
Yeah. But this one is for the flooring renovation.
I guess I'll just add that the first two here are utilizing ESSER funds, and then the last one will be PI or general fund.
Is that included in the flooring that you showed us?
Yeah, it's that 1.1 out of the general assembly allocation is a majority of the 9.06 resolution on here. And then the rest of it is coming from smaller portions from other ESSER sources, and then the rest from general fund or PI. Where's the flooring going?
All across the.
Well, this is specifically repairing the facilities building, like foundation work and.
Yeah, it's a foundation. So what we're trying to do is make the small building at the elementary ready for additional students in the future. So that used to be some 2 classrooms, but we've had to do a lot of updating to that facility building to make it, ready for students in the future.
The facility building goes to kindergarten?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Can students access that? This is jumping at. Can students access that from inside, or do they have to go outside?
They have to go outside.
So what's the financial magnitude of this item?
This one is 80,000. The next one, 9.06 is 1.6 million, and then 9.07 is about 250,000.
And they're primarily funded through the ESSER funds that we received recently, and which is effectively offsetting other capital spend that we would have within our permanent improvement levy or general fund if needed and so forth.
Yep, exactly.
And how do we ensure that, given that we have to pass this resolution to go around the bid process, how do we ensure that we're getting competitive quotes?
So for 9.05, this first one, the issue with that was actually that we could not get vendors to respond to provide us quotes. Tanya, I don't know if you want to speak to that, how many vendors we attempted to contact to get quotes for that particular project.
It was
But I know
4 or
at
5.
least 3, yeah. So we worked with our attorneys on this particular resolution as really the only alternative to that process and to be able to get it done. So we could alternatively go to bid, which would get vendors more likely to respond than just to an informal quote that we request, but then it wouldn't be done in the timing that we wanted it to. The other two, we got quotes for from alternative vendors.
So for our role effectively as being fiscally responsible for these funds and things like that, we've got multiple quotes that we're relying on, which would be similar to the multiple bids that you would have received
Right.
in a competitive bid process.
Yeah, and we have to sign off when we submit our application for these federal funds that we're following all of those responsible decision-making and document that to be audited and everything.
Okay, thank you. Roll please.
Ms. Deeds? Aye. Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
9.06 is the urgent necessity for the HVAC.
Second.
Do we really need new HVAC at the elementary school?
I think we could get a testimony here, but let's not.
Let's go ahead.
Ms. Deeds? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day? Aye. Mr. Miller?
I am looking forward to the elementary school kids someday.
And then the 9.07 is the approval for necessity resolution for the high
Hi,
school.
I'm Dr. Brian Harris, and I have an important question for anyone with arthritis.
A motion?
I'm sorry.
So moved.
Was that no?
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day? Aye. Ms. Deeds? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye. That ends the action agenda, consent agenda. 10.01A through C, or through D.
Second.
Okay, I'd like to highlight a few things. We have a donation of $5,000 for uniforms from the athletic boosters to the athletic department. We have most of the supplementals for the spring sports season. We have a couple of leaves of absences and some volunteers that are going to be working at the elementary K-6. Resignations, the first two resignations are for supplementals that we have listed due to COVID-19 concerns. Those supplementals were actually not satisfied. So we did not offer the drama program this year at the middle school. And the music director, we have a separate supplemental for music performances. This is for the music direction for a bigger process that we did not do for the music program. So those are supplementals. And then the big item is Mr. Durst, Granville High School principal, is leaving at the end of this year. He is joining his family's business and leaving education. So we wish him the best at the end of the year. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it for quite a few meetings after as we engage in the posting and hiring process for our next leader of GHS. But between Mr. Burnett and Mr. Durst, we've had 14 years of excellent leadership up at the high school, and we need to continue to find people that can lead that building and align with the district objectives that we have set forth as a governance body. So looking forward to engaging in that search process. So that's the consent agenda.
Before I get to comment about Mr. Durst, there's a donation from the athletic boosters to the athletic department for uniforms. Does the music boosters do that? The arts boosters do that as well, or do they just purchase uniforms?
So
the boosters purchase the uniforms and then they have to donate or something?
So actually, so the boosters used to buy the athletic uniforms. A few years ago, we changed that process to the district. Uniforms are required to participate in athletics as a district expense, so we pay for those uniforms. When the teams decide they want extras in terms of design, home and away, those extra above and beyond what we have budgeted out of the athletic budget, they often decide they want to use their designated funds through the boosters to supplement what the district provides.
Okay, that's what I did. Thank you.
Does that cover just high school uniforms, athletic uniforms? Or
Yeah.
all?
No, that's only a specific sport.
Oh, wow,
Oh, yeah.
$5,000 for one sport?
Uniforms are expensive.
Oh,
And that's the supplement.
Yeah,
The district
that's the
is paying like 2,000 or something.
wow, for how many students?
For that, I would have to get that information from the athletic director.
Our booster organizations, both the arts boosters and the athletic boosters, have been fantastic at supporting things like uniforms. The band uniforms are outrageously expensive. The concert uniforms are very expensive as well. And those booster organizations are really a key part of us being able to sustain those programs. So those have been fantastic from all those organizations.
Ms.
shout out to Mr. Drake too. I just noticed there'll be a
Oh,
lot of
that's right.
elementary school
I
children
forgot.
that would be
Yes,
disappointed
the
about
other
that.
part of that is
Brother
Mr.
Drake.
Drake at the elementary. So thank you, Cecile, for calling my attention to the addendum. So, yeah, Mr. Drake has done a fantastic job. He is a very engaging physical education teacher down at the elementary, and we're going to miss him terribly.
Absolutely, yeah, and he's always been great about having volunteers, obviously not during
Right.
COVID times, but he's really supportive of parents, really easy to work with when you want to come in and volunteer, and yeah, he's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and resignation with appreciation and service to Mr. Durst for sure. That kicks off a process for us to do some serious thinking about how we replace that role. There are big shoes to fill, right? And I'm confident we can keep up the culture and things like that he's helped instill. So thanks very much to his service, and I'm glad we have some time to think about it as well. Right, so we'll have hopefully some success in the search process and developing the right candidate and next principal there. Yep.
I have a question about that hiring process. So what would that look like? Have you already sent out the call to employees?
Yeah, so it went out today.
Okay.
So, or you
I waited till the board meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, after the meeting. But we have the typical organizations that we send it to, like the Ohio Association of Secondary Administrators, the Buckeye Association of School Administrators. So there's a network of organizations that we post to that typically have a wide connection and base to apply to, as well as other sites like Ohio Needs Jobs.
Any more questions about the consent agenda? Thank you. Roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
In protest to some of these retirements and resignations.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to the financial section. Item 11.01, approval of the January 2022 financial report.
So moved. Second.
Great job, Brittany. I think that was a good report as always and so forth. And, we have so many moving balls trying to compare to prior years and things like that. And I'm not sure what the right invariant metric is, but I think we need to kind of work hard on how we compare to prior years. Because we're always going, insurance payment, this thing, and so forth and so forth. So I encourage you just to kind of help us think about, like, well, is there some more normalizable formula, like dollars per pupil, or tax dollars per resident, or something like that we can use to kind of think about how comparing ourselves to prior year and even the longer term trends and things like that can help, because again, there's always these kind of curveballs that are being thrown, sometimes in good ways with revenue that comes in, sometimes in challenging way with expenses, or sometimes it just money gets pulled into 1 month or one academic year that's not in another. But certainly format and quality of the reports, good as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Item 11.02, approval of the permanent appropriation resolution for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. So
Second.
adjustments this month, we're increasing the appropriation for general fund and permanent improvement for the projects that we talked about earlier, as well as some minor changes to several federal funds. Every year they do kind of like a true-up process that gives us tiny little allocations that we need to revise all the budgets for. So hopefully we have all those captured this month. Any additional questions?
Take the roll, please.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Excuse me, aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye. I would like to make a motion to move into executive sessions to conduct negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms or conditions of their employment.
Second.
And I will point out that following this executive session, there will be no action action items. Roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Thank you all for joining us here this evening, and we'll return to executive session.